It's Michael Popak, and by the looks of things, it's time for Legal AF After Dark. The Manhattan DA's office is gearing up for the April 15th trial of Donald Trump. Criminal prosecution related to the Stormy Daniels hush money cover-up, business record fraud. That's a mouthful. And the judge is getting ornery and getting upset with Donald Trump and his lawyers. He's chastised the lawyers for being unethical. He's gagged Donald Trump. He's denied their motions related to witnesses and evidence. Witnesses are ready. Trump's gagged. Judge is pissed. We break it all down for you. One place on Legal AF. Take a listen. So let's start with your old stomping grounds, as we like to say, the Manhattan DA's office. I'm going to turn it over to you, Karen. What's your takeaway from Judge Merchan's demeanor, his interaction with Todd Blanche on behalf of Donald Trump, the rulings that he's issued, the gag order, the trial date, the no, you don't get to file more motions without asking for permission order, his decision-making on witnesses and evidence? Do that, and then I'll pick up with what I think is going to be the eventual appeal. I'm not sure it stops the April 15th trial date, but why don't you do all the nitty-gritty trial work, and then I'll wrap it up at the end.
Yeah, so it's clear that this case is starting. It's going to trial. And the reason I say it's clear is that's how everybody is acting, especially the judge. The judge is absolutely behaving in a way that the trial is beginning April 15th, come hell or high water. I would have thought it was going to start March 25th, like it originally was. And I think everybody else did. And then the Department of Justice, Biden's Department of Justice, and the Southern District of New York dumped a huge trove of documents into Trump's lap and the DA's office lap at the 11th hour, literally a week or two before the trial was supposed to start. And so for Donald Trump to go out and say, oh, this is all a collusion with Joe Biden, with Alvin Bragg, is so ridiculous, because it really had the potential of derailing this case, and it did derail the case for about 3 weeks. So there's no coordination there. There's no collusion there. This is, as it always has been, two completely separate offices who do their own thing and occasionally bump into each other with cases because they're both in Manhattan. And you can tell, though, that this judge has just keeping everybody on a short leash so that nothing else delays and that this trial goes when it's supposed to go now, April 15th. And let's just talk about two recent decision and orders that Judge Merchan, who's the trial judge in this case, that he issued in addition to the gag order that he also just issued after the court appearance on March 25th, because on March 25th, the day the case was supposed to go to trial, they had a hearing about these documents and about this document dump. And at that hearing, Judge Merchan clearly expressed and voiced his frustration at the lawyers, and in particular, the lawyers representing Donald Trump, and is basically sending a very clear message. Start acting like real lawyers. You're officers of the court first. Start acting like real lawyers, not just this performative thing that you do for an audience of one, your client. And so he's really letting them know that he's in charge, that he's going to protect this jury, because that's his job. His job is to protect the trial and protect the jury. And when I say protect the jury, I don't mean protect them from any threats or harm. I mean protect them from irrelevant, inadmissible information that they should never see or hear, so that there is a fair trial based on relevant, admissible evidence, and that the verdict, whatever it is only based on that and not anything else. That there, A, is a trial, B, that it's a fair trial and a just trial. And so all that Judge Merchan is doing is to make sure that that happens. And of course, he has the benefit of what Donald Trump did in front of Judge Engoron, right? We saw him talking outside of court every day, attacking judges and witnesses and others. And there, he could be a little more lenient, the judge, because there was no jury. So there was not the risk that there is in a jury case, right? Because a judge can just put all that extraneous stuff aside. And he also has the benefit of how Trump behaved in the E. Jean Carroll cases, right? And to know exactly, and that was a case with the jury. And I think he's watching what Trump is doing in other cases, and he's learning from it and ruling accordingly. So let's talk about the two decisions that Judge Merchan issued the day after the hearing, which was, one of them was Trump's motion to, he made a motion to ask for public proceedings and to unseal everything. And he actually said in Trump's motion, the public should not be shielded from anything. So I'm making a motion to unseal everything. So if you were to read that, if a lay person were to read that and who isn't following this in any granular detail the way you and I are, Popok and Ben, they might wonder, wait, what's going on here? Why are there things being hidden from the public? A courtroom and a trial is a public forum, and there shouldn't be anything secret or hidden. And so Judge Merchan's order was very clear at spelling out exactly what is going on and what's not going on. He's not going to let anyone be misled about what's going on in his courtroom. And so he says in his decision, Trump asks for public proceedings and that the public not be shielded from anything. And what he said was, the court, basically everything that is normally maintained in a public file here is in a public file. So there's nothing secret. And he said the court, now the bigger court, not his courtroom, but like the unified court system, they're even posting key documents online, which is unusual for Manhattan criminal court. They're not online yet. It's not like federal court or civil cases even where you can get stuff online. Manhattan doesn't have that yet, and they're working on it. But here in this case, they're even putting stuff online for that. And he said, of course, the proceedings are open to the public like they are any other time. He says, all you're trying to do, Donald Trump, there was one protective order on May 8th, 2023, and you're trying to get around that. And he says that your statement, Donald Trump, defendant Trump, that there are, quote, multiple rulings that have been shielded from the public is wrong. And he said, all you're talking about is one email that I sent to you guys that I said is regarding this protective order, and you are misleading people. You're trying to let people think that there are things that are hidden. It's not. And he said that that the email that he sent is not a decision or an order. It's a communication, and it was just an email. That's it. And so for one email sent to both parties by the court, for Trump to then somehow say this is not a public proceeding is misleading. So he kind of smacked him down with that one. The second one that he also filed the next day was a decision and order on defendant's motion to vacate a court order on filing motions, because on May 23rd, 2023, which was 2 days before the case was supposed to start, the trial was supposed to start. May 23rd, 2023. I'm talking 2023. Sorry. May 23rd, 2023. The court, that's when the court set a firm trial date of March 25th, 2024. And the court told the parties, he said to both sides, to the prosecution and to the defense, they were directed, do not engage yourselves in any other case, in any other trial, or commit to anything that would prevent you from starting and completing this trial beginning March 25th, 2024. The judge said in a decision, which I thought, this is really shots fired, as they say, that he would put this in an order. He said, quote, since that time, since that 2023 date, the defendant has repeatedly tried to delay the start of the trial. Indeed, the March 25th, 2024 start date has now been moved to April 15th, 2024. He goes on to say that the parties have filed numerous motions, including one on presidential immunity, 2 weeks before the trial was supposed to start. And the next day, March 8th, the court ruled no more motions without permission. You have to get permission to file motions. The date for any motions long past. You filed many motions. You've had many opportunities. We're going to trial. And any motion that you file now late is going to be to try to delay. They said no more motions without permission. And he said, look, the defendant is trying to get around this, try to vacate this order. And he said, first of all, denied, no more, I'm not vacating this order that there's no more motions. And by the way, by including when you ask for permission to file another motion, by including in this permission letter, including a 51-page motion with 214 pages of exhibits, that doesn't cut it. And it's clearly disregarding the court's order. He said then 2 days after that, Trump filed 3 more motions, right? 3 more motion letters, including the one to say we have to be able to file more motions. So basically what the court said was, look, what Judge Merchan said is this court advises counsel that it expects and welcomes zealous advocacy and creative lawyering. However, it also expects those advocates to demonstrate the proper respect and decorum to the courts and judicial officers, and never forget that they're officers of the court and that the court follow court orders. So you could just tell Judge Merchan is getting impatient, essentially, with the defense attorneys and with the defendant, who are trying to circumvent the law, the rules, and do things the way they want to do them, the way they always do. They don't want to listen to the court. And the judge is in charge. That's who is in charge of that courtroom. And so the third and final thing that stuck out to me for the hearing on March 25th was Donald Trump, as usual, went outside the courtroom and made his speeches and accused everyone of all sorts of things that were false, including the judge, including the prosecutor, witch hunt, all his normal, Michael Cohen, all his normal shenanigans. And that prompted the judge the very next day to rule on the prosecution's earlier request for a gag order. And it had been out there for a while. Judge Merchan hadn't ruled on it. Clearly, he was waiting to see if Trump was going to walk up to that line again and potentially cross it. And he did. He absolutely came very close to the line, right, by making these speeches. And so Judge Merchan, what did Judge Merchan do? He said, I'm granting the people's request for a gag order. It's very, very similar to the language in the gag order that was upheld in Washington, D.C. by the D.C. Circuit. And so I'm not surprised that he did it that way, that Judge Merchan did it that way, because since that's already been upheld by a federal appellate court, that's a way of kind of knowing that it's okay to that a limited gag order here would be okay. And what does Donald Trump do right away? Literally right away. As soon as he has the gag order, he posts these 2 Truth Social postings where he calls out the judge, who says Judge Merchan is suffering from an acute case of Trump derangement syndrome. His daughter represents crooked Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Adam Schiff, and other radical liberals. She's posted a picture of me behind bars. Her obvious goal is to make it completely impossible for me to get a fair trial, and has now issued another illegal, un-American, unconstitutional order. He continues to try and take away my rights. This judge, by issuing a vicious gag order, is wrongfully attempting to deprive me of my First Amendment right to speak out against the weaponization of law enforcement, including the fact that crooked Joe Biden, Merrick Garland, and their hacks and thugs are tracking and following me all across the country, obsessively trying to persecute me while everyone knows I've done nothing wrong. He then posts another one. So let me get this straight. The judge's daughter is allowed to post pictures of her dream of putting me in jail. The Manhattan DA is able to say whatever lies he wants about me. The judge can violate our laws and Constitution at every time, but I'm not allowed to talk about the attacks against me and the lunatics trying to destroy my life and prevent me from winning. He goes on and talks about the judge's daughter again. And, I had to go back and reread the gag order because I thought for sure this violates it. And when you go back and you reread the gag order, he does not, somehow he once again does not cross the line. Let's just read the pertinent part of the gag order. The order issued by Judge Merchan on March 26 says, the people's motion for restriction on extrajudicial means outside of court. Extrajudicial statements by the defendant is granted to the extent that defendant is directed to refrain from the following. A, making or directing others to make public statements about known or reasonably foreseeable witnesses concerning their potential participation in the investigation or this criminal proceeding. Okay, so he doesn't talk about witnesses. B, making or directing others to make public statements about counsel in this case other than the district attorney, meaning other than Bragg. Didn't do that. 2, members of the court's staff and the district attorney's staff or the family members of counsel or staff member if those statements are made with the intent to materially interfere with or cause others to materially interfere with counsel's or staff's work on the criminal case, or with the knowledge that such interference is likely to result, and C, making or directing others to make public statements about any juror in the proceeding. Excuse me. So that's what Donald Trump did. He walked up to the line of the gag order. I would say he stepped on the line and stomped on it, but I'm not sure he crossed it. What do you think, Pope Hawk?
No, he's a cockroach, and he adapts. He reads exactly the contours of the gag order, and he decides at that moment, in consultation with his lawyers, what he can get away with. And it's not by accident. It's not inadvertent. He says, I'm sure there's some sort of meeting in Mar-a-Lago, some sort of huddle. And he's like, well, what can I say? Can I attack the daughter? Hold on. Yes. Can I attack the judge? Hold on. Yes. Can I attack Alvin Bragg, the prosecutor? Yes. He's like, okay, good. That's what I'm going to do. And then that's what he does. Now, this gag order, though, even though he's able to do all of this, he will then, in the same breath, because he speaks with forked tongue, he will then argue at the appellate level somehow, as he did with the D.C. Court of Appeals, that the gag order is overbroad, that it violates his First Amendment rights, that he's, you'll hear his lawyers. I'll just do it now. I mean, we could just play act now. Everything they're going to say, we've seen this all before. I've seen this episode before, and they'll just say, "Oh yes, he should have the right to fire back." And I think at the end of the day, the appellate division, even though I'm not thrilled with what they did recently for Donald Trump in lowering the amount of the undertaking or bond he's required to put up for the civil fraud matter. And we're talking about the same appellate division. I mean, a slightly rotating group of justices. They don't have that many justices on the appellate division first department, so there'll be some overlap. But they're not gonna. He's already been gagged more than once. They already challenged an earlier version of the gag order by Judge Merchan when he got arraigned, and that failed. And every time he gets gagged by a federal court or something like that, he challenges it, and ultimately it gets upheld. Now, the one for Judge Chutkin, which is still in place, despite the fact that the case has stayed until the Supreme Court hears oral argument on April 25th on the immunity issue and makes its ruling before the end of the June term, the end of the term in June. It's still in place, and she reinforced that it's still in place when she ruled a couple of months ago on some motion practice that the special counsel was filing, and she said, "Oh, by the way, all my other orders are still enforceable, including the gag order." And so I think you're right. Judge Merchan wisely used as his template the gag order for Judge Chutkin, which already went through the acid bath and litmus test of being tested and came out the other side in D.C. because hers was mainly upheld. They pared it back a bit, but it was mainly upheld. And I think he's right about that. And I agree with you that the judge is, it's funny, it's always like this weird, you could tell what's renting space inside of Donald Trump's head, right? Speaking about real estate and leasing, and Merchan and Alvin Bragg and Letitia James are renting space for free inside of Donald Trump's head. And he said, even though the judge is elegant, it's so weird, the things that he comments on, he's still, a Biden puppet. I mean, I don't know. The guy that worked in New York for so long should know that, Manhattan doesn't really take its marching orders from whoever's sitting in the White House at any given moment. It sort of moves to its own drummer, and a Supreme Court judge, trial judge, especially one that's been appointed or elected, they're not taking orders from anybody, nor do they have to. But he can't help himself because it's the grift, right? He's able. Donald Trump is able to, he raises $100,000 after he inappropriately, immorally bashes the judge's daughter, who's an adult daughter who works in PR for a political firm, who didn't work on any of these campaigns, but those firms worked for some Democratic operatives. And who cares? Who cares? If we cared what people did who were related to the person in interest, then we would be a little more, I mean, I am, but people would be a little more hot and bothered about how much money and grift the Trump kids made while they were working in the White House. I mean, I've seen numbers, and I did a hot take on it, that Ivanka and Jared made $750 million while they were working for the president of the United States in office, let alone the $2 billion he brought in as a rookie hedge fund manager from the Saudi private investment fund. So, what's the bottom line here? Trial is going to be on the 15th of April. Jury selection starts then. They're going to pick 12 jurors. They're going to have to get a unanimous jury, but they've done it before. The Manhattan DAs already had their dress rehearsal. They went 17-0 against Donald Trump's organization on tax evasion. They got 12 jurors to go their way. They were up against half of the same defense team, and Susan Necklace representing Donald Trump. And we'll see what happens with Donald Trump, whether he testifies. I sort of want him to testify. Every time he testifies, things get a lot worse for him. He loses anyway. He's 0-31 for jurors in all the cases that have been tried against him so far. He hasn't convinced one juror about anything, civil, state, federal, criminal, nothing. He's 0-31. Every juror has ruled against him. I haven't even added in the grand jurors and the special purpose grand jurors, and I'd be in the 60s. So he can't win there. He's 0-60 in every case he's ever brought related to election interference. And yet people are thinking, he may pull this out. And I'm thinking, what legally are you smoking?
I think he's going to testify.
Well, he may, but he's not going to win that trial. And my point I'm making,
he doesn't need to win. He just needs to convince one juror. That's the problem.
No, I don't mean, when I say win, I mean he's not going to convince one person. And my point is, every time he testifies, he makes matters worse, not better for himself. He may take the stand because he thinks, well, what's the worst going to happen? I get convicted and I'll have house arrest for 4 months or 5 months or whatever it is. But we'll see. I mean, you and I have a bet with Ben about it. Ben and I are on he's not going to testify. He'll threaten up until the moment of, but I don't believe he'll ultimately testify. But we'll see. Stranger things have happened. I didn't think Sam Bankman-Fried was going to testify either in the FTX case, and he did. And he's looking at 60 years in prison as a result. We'll see what happens.
It's me and Salty against you and Ben. We're on the Trump's going to testify side.
If it was a pickup basketball game, I'd take that. I'm taller than somebody. I don't know who. Somebody. Well, that was Karen Freeman McNiffalo and me. Can't ask for anybody better. She used to be in the Manhattan DA's office. She was almost the Manhattan DA. And I'm a criminal defense lawyer. We break it all down for you. One place on Legal AF on your dial on the MeidasTouch Network on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on this YouTube channel. Help the MeidasTouch Network get to 3 million free subscribers. All you got to do is free subscribe. They're really close. Help them get there before Election Day. And then on audio podcast platforms of your choice, you'll find Legal AF. We pull it all together. 5 major stories at the intersection of law and politics every Wednesday and Saturday. And then on hot takes just like this one. If you know all about Legal AF and you missed the show or saw the show, great. Appreciate you. Thank you for being part of our audience. Take that clip, pass it on to friends and family and say, hey, that Legal AF podcast I like a lot. Here's an example of it. Maybe they'll join our audience. And if by chance you have no idea what I'm talking about or who I am, that's Legal AF. I'm Michael Popak. And you can join us on Wednesdays and Saturdays. I invite you to on the YouTube station or channel for MeidasTouch and on Legal AF podcast platforms of your choice. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popak reporting. Heary. Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.